late to the transfer portal. Let's start in Starkville, where Mississippi State got a wide receiver transferring in from Georgia. That would be the national champion for the first time in 41 years, Georgia Bulldogs. Had only a couple of catches for Georgia this past season, but Borky, he's big. 6'4", 220. Justin Robinson making the move from one set of dogs to another. He is joining Mike Leach and Steve Spurrier Jr. and that Mississippi State offense.
Yeah, big-bodied wide receiver. Something that they've kind of been missing. I mean, I know Mike Leach doesn't use tight ends. He's bordering on tight end size, which I'm curious to see if they use him a little differently than they've approached offense this past season. Having somebody like this that, especially considering State's red zone troubles, now you've got a guy that you think, at this size and with his recruiting pedigree, could win you a one-on-one matchup on the edge where Rodgers just kind of throws up a 50-50 ball and he's able to outmuscle in size a smaller defensive back.
Played in 9 out of 15 games this year, mostly as a reserve wide receiver. Had mentioned the 2 catches for 18 yards, had a 12-yard touchdown catch against UAB, had a catch and a win against Vanderbilt. As a true freshman, this was his redshirt freshman season. As a true freshman a year ago, he had foot and shoulder injuries, and those kind of lingered early into the year, missed 4 games due to injury in the 2021 season. But this was, as you mentioned, a guy that was highly touted, highly thought of coming out of high school, former 4-star recruit according to On3's consensus rankings. Committed to Georgia as, number 367 player nationally. And he was a top 100 wide receiver, top 40 player in the state of Georgia, part of that number 1 ranked recruiting class a year ago. So it's a big pickup for Mississippi State.
Yeah, they needed to add wide receivers. I know we had this conversation last week, and we had a couple listeners say, well, why? They've got good wide receivers in the room. Doesn't matter. You lost a guy like Mekhi Polk, a record-breaking receiver. You needed to add more bodies. And I think depth, while not talked about a lot because they were still productive, was kind of an issue for State. I think they could really benefit by having more talent in that room. And between this and the Northwestern transfer, it's a bit unproven, but 2 guys with great recruiting pedigree. And how often are schools in this state beating Georgia for a recruit? It's just not happening right now. So you're getting a guy that Georgia wanted and signed for a reason. So it's a big pickup.
Mekhi Polk, 105 catches, 9 touchdowns, 1,046 receiving yards, led the team in all 3 of those categories. So that's what Mississippi State is trying to replace in terms of receiving. So a good pickup for Mississippi State over the weekend. We'll see how it plays out. And again, the size is just off the charts at 6'4" and 220. In Athens, another guy leaving, JT Daniels, is hitting the transfer portal. I don't know if that has been reported officially, but all signs, according to the folks that cover Georgia, pointing to him moving on. Wonder where JT Daniels ends up.
I tweeted at Furman telling them to go get him, so hopefully they pull it off. But the thing
My guess is he has other suitors.
That's going to be an interesting recruitment. Because I guess he's going to get a waiver, or has to, right? That's my question. Is he's going to transfer for the second time? Don't you get penalized the second time?
Well, is he a graduate now?
Must be.
Because if he's graduated, he can transfer for free.
Who's going to get him? I agree with you that somebody will, but
does he go back to the West Coast?
It's a guy that was at Southern Cal and lost his job there, went to Georgia, couldn't beat out a walk-on. And with all due respect to Stetson Bennett, an extremely limited walk-on, couldn't beat him out. I mean, if you're a school that needs a quarterback,
you just keep on knocking on Stetson Bennett. He just keeps on winning.
He's a great story. He's the best story. But the tools aren't there compared to your typical...
Keep on doubting him, Borky. He'll just keep on winning. 41 years. That's how long it was between national championships.
It's true.
Stetson Bennett IV was the one that delivered it. The mailman delivered the goods.
And some other goods were delivered as well. even in this state. Anyway, but who would take him? That's a
LSU
curious
needs
thing.
a quarterback.
No, they don't.
Just what somebody texted us.
Well, I would take Miles Brennan over JT Daniels. People keep dumping on Miles Brennan. Look at the 3 games against SEC-only opponents he played in before his injury, and tell me that guy is bad. Because bad football players,
just unproven with a history of injuries.
Right. But bad quarterbacks don't throw for 300+ yards in 3 consecutive SEC games. They just don't do that. And so, yeah, they're going to go from him to whatever his name is, the 5-star that they just signed, and they'll be cooking.
Ole Miss fans are waiting on pins and needles now to figure out what's going to happen after a weekend of official visits from Jackson Dart and Michael Trigg Jr. They were in Oxford on, Saturday afternoon and all day Sunday, and were scheduled to leave this morning.
Yep.
Just kind of anecdotal reports that it went well, that Ole Miss feels really good about its position. They visited Oklahoma prior to coming to Oxford. And if Ole Miss lands those 2, I feel like it's going to change a lot of people's perceptions of what Ole Miss, what they accomplished in the offseason.
Yeah, and in the meantime, they got a pretty coveted offensive tackle as well, a guy that was first team All-CUSA for Western Kentucky.
Mason Brooks.
And he committed to Ole Miss today. That's a position that they needed. They needed a tackle. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. The assumption appears to be that Nick Broker, who announced he's returning to Ole Miss, by the way, there was a thought that he could leave for the NFL. He announced today he's coming back. Will slide down to guard, and Brooks will come in if he acclimates and plays tackle, because Broker's future, at least professionally, is not at tackle. It's more likely at guard. So if the transition works, it's seamless, and that was a big pickup today. They needed that.